for any items not on the agenda? Do we have any emails or anything? Okay, thank you. E, consent agenda, adoption of the December 3rd, 2024 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
When I reviewed the minutes on the, under paragraph B, roll call, staff present, wasn't an attorney present, that gentleman? I don't see him on here. Was that the meeting he was here?
Last meeting, yeah.
I would move to approve with that correction.
Can I get a second?
A second.
Everyone in favor?
All right.
Okay, F, business items, election of chair and vice chair for the 2025 calendar year. Do we have a staff report?
Here.
Our first item of the year, I guess, is the election of local commission chair and vice chair. This is a routine item at the beginning of each year, you will select the chair and vice chair, and this will become effective immediately, and we put the people that take home the end of this year. First, it's a pretty straightforward process. If there will ask for nomination, which is usually seconded, and then any other nominations can be made. Discussion regarding nominations for first one, and the chair calls for a vote. On each nomination that was seconded, in the reverse order that they were, and we will keep this process for the vice chair. Once you have those, then we order the.
Thank you. Okay, does anyone want to start? Or, I'm sorry, can I get is there any public comment on this item? Okay, thank you. All right, planning commission discussion and decision. Does anyone, Commissioner Mendoza, any comment on this item?
I'm good with leaving it as we are. That's my only comment.
Commissioner Gallardo?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Ortiz for chair.
Okay, well, we have a nomination. Do we have a second?
You want to be chair?
Okay.
Maybe next year will be better.
Okay, well, I would like to nominate Commissioner Garcia for the chair position. Can I get a second, or,
A second.
okay, can I get a vote, or a roll call for a vote, or? Yes.
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 Okay, so we can move. Or,
We have to be vice.
okay. You would like to be vice chair? Okay.
I move to appoint Vice Chair Kiedis to remain vice chair.
I second. Can we get a vote count, or? Yes.
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 Perfect. All right.
Okay, thank you for that, and I'd like to thank former Chair Cynthia Zarala for her service this past year. You did a really good job. Proud of you. So our second item is approval of meeting dates for the 2025 Planning Commission calendar staff report.
Okay, so our next item is just approving the planning calendar for the whole month year. And you have to sign the staff report, so as you will see, it's all in the box, and that's planning commission agency during the first year of every month. With the extension of March, that means you can use your rate for whatever you can do third, and that's to accommodate travel for it. You recommend that you review and adopt.
Thank you for that. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, moving on to Planning Commission discussion and decision.
I'm okay with keeping it on every first Tuesday of the month.
I'll second
Just for the May meeting on May 6th, that's my birthday. I'd like a short agenda. Other than that, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Now we can move on to the public hearing. Our first public hearing is the consideration of a resolution recommending that the city council adopt an ordinance amending chapter 17.90 of the Greenfield Municipal Code related to accessory dwelling units. Staff report, please.
Hopefully you can hear me. All right, thank you, Chair of the Planning Commission, Barcelona Contract Planner for the City of Greenfield. Today we're discussing the topics of accessory dwelling units and the ordinance. This is something that's been heavily on the mind of state politicians in Sacramento in terms of dictating to us what we can and can't do. It also ties to requirements in terms of housing element update and making sure our plans are happy with what Sacramento is doing. There's a long history with this, especially more in the last 6 years, 7 years, where the state is throwing a hammer on local jurisdictions to force them to adopt these. And I took the note that they keep passing what I call one-size-fits-all laws on ADUs annually without consideration for local communities. And the specific communities. So please, when we talk about or ask questions, take it under that vein that the state is very committed to the ADU program and is really going after cities that won't do it. And in fact, they got to the point where they require you to have your ordinance blessed by HCD if it's not what defaults to state law. So, as you said many times, on these right ordinance for us. In 2019, it eliminated minimum lot size, it set an 850 square foot standard, made it so HOAs can't prohibit them, or CCRs that have prohibitions against them are no longer valid. In 2020, they prohibited owner occupancy requirements. In 2023, they required cities to develop programs with pre-approved ADU plans. And more recently, elimination of replacement parking when you convert a garage from ADU, and also an ADU amnesty program, which essentially, if you have an old ADU that's never permitted, you have an opportunity to rectify it. As I mentioned before, ADU ordinances that do not meet state requirements refer to state statutes, as they do now in our code. Local ordinances must be reviewed by state housing and development department. The program to update the ordinance is required with the housing element adoption, which has its own issues and penalties if you don't. And there's very little discretion available to local jurisdictions on the use. statute. The distinction between how many square feet an ADU can have, 800 is where they can't, you have to allow an 800 square foot if it exceeds lot coverage or other rules. It's a typical what you have to allow. Like I said, it eliminates maximum lot coverage standards, so let's say your house, so typically in a low density residential zone, in our R1 zoning district, the limit is 40%. So if you have a 6,000 square foot lot, you can have 2,400 square feet of building coverage. That includes garages, accessory structures, your house. The footprint, that's not the second story, but the footprint of the house in a 6,000 square foot lot is 2,400 square feet. So let's say you have that single unit of 2,400 square feet. Well, we still have to allow you to take up more of your yard to put it in the use. That's basically what that. Existing accessory structures converted ADUs do not have to comply with setbacks, so this is something that, especially in the older part of town, where you have a lot of structures that were built prior to introduction of setbacks, zero lot line garages in the back, or not next to alleys, or up against alleys, and then those structures can be converted legally to ADUs. A lot of them, don't code now, but they can be converted to code, you don't have to use them, no, at all. Height limits, 16 feet for detached units, 25 feet for height limit for detached ADU, that's for the existing dwelling. That changes the parking requirements, which has been a struggle for a lot of communities. No replacement for parking on garage conversions, you're seeing those within our community now, where people are legally converting their garages, putting out the garage door, putting windows, and the city does not require those spaces to be replaced. Permits now are ministerial, so they don't go to the planning commission, they don't go to anybody, they're basically stamped and approved within 60 days, unless there's things that we need to fix. And another reason that these units are rather popular in the community and in the state in general is that if it's under 750 square feet, there are no impact fees. So no traffic, sewer, water, any of those fees are allowed to be charged with the offense. One of the exceptions to deny use, they're very specific. Adequacy of water, adequacy of sewer services, impact of the accessory dwelling unit on traffic flow, impact on public safety, and non-residential zones. You can't put in non-residential zones if you want to. When we talk about water and sewer, you're probably talking about you have to, in the case like on the peninsula, they talk about we don't have water credits available. Then you're talking on a blanket, essentially on a bill, or a sewer moratorium, for example. And that would, it has to be a case where you're not just evaluating you on all the other. But the limitations on not allowing you to use are really limited. There are some technical changes we're proposing since the staff report came out that we helped in the city attorney. Mostly just clarified items, just little word here, little word there. One has to do with allowing, you have to allow ADUs in multifamily, if there's a multifamily zoning. There's another one about typo, and one of the subsections, there's a bit about the 850 versus 800. And then there's, we have a garage conversion chapter in our municipal code. It talks about putting basically a landscape plan or something that would block the driveway from the wall that people can somehow get very we got the various landscape plan, something like the first spot. Because it's going to drive it. How's that? Like I said, we are very constrained in what we're allowed to do here. The state, part of the one to get us to our housing law, and want to adopt the ordinance is in line with there. The current ordinance is last modified in 2015. They lost since then. The alternative is the two parties one is not a favorite and we default
Thank you for that report, Mr. Slama. Are there any public comments?
No public comments.
It is a hearing, so I would open it.
Oh, opening the public hearing?
This has been a notice public hearing.
Okay. So the public hearing is now open. Again, are there any public comments? Okay, we'll close public comments. And close the public hearing. And move on to Planning Commission discussion and decision. Start to my left with Commissioner Mendoza.
Is there, I know like the county has them, but does the city have the pre-approved ADUs? Or does the city not have that? I know the county has, you know, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom that they can go pool and make it a streamlined process when it comes to approvals or.
No, Commissioner Mendoza, we do not have pre-approved plans. We're working to get that accomplished.
Would that include garages as well?
We're not entirely sure,
Okay.
honestly.
Now, you mentioned the denying for, there's a few there, you know, the big, I know there's big issues in other cities as far as water credits go. Is that an issue here in town or not at all?
So the city is the water provider, and we've had them to provide now to credit or deny on the basis of the lack of water. So there is no restriction because of any development into the
And then you mentioned the last thing, if you convert the garage, you have to have a barrier. That is something that's going to come up with this new ordinance, or is that already in place?
on that. So there's an existing garage conversion ordinance, that's where that language comes from.
Mhm.
That language also talks about replacing the parking and making that. So it's just, that's where it comes from, the ordinance, and we can just, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you, that's one of those issues that you cannot, you can't put in anything in the city because you can't do anything that is not really black and white. So you can't go to the designer community to say, is the color acceptable? You can't do anything that is completely acceptable. It's only something that planner of a certain size is completely accept. But they're very limited on what type of things you can require. Because they do not want you to do things to make it expensive, to make you not want to put them through.
So, last question is trying to read a body language here. Is this positive or is this not positive? Is it something that, you know, we should, you know, encourage or should be happy about, or is it?
You know, it depends on where you come from. From a housing standpoint, where housing is very hard to come by and very difficult to obtain, there are definite advantages to accessory dwelling units in terms of providing additional housing opportunities to, in many cases, in local communities, for family members, additional rental opportunities. You know, it's a way easier to build an accessory dwelling unit than possibly having in a suburb or an apartment complex. And it's a very well used solution for, you know, larger families, for people looking for housing, or for people that are looking for first housing. You know, they're commonly called brand new units or remodel units or something like that. They will increase density, they will increase parking, depending on where you're at, especially without the places parking requirements. So I think it really depends on where you look at it. The state of California, as an entity, is very clear that this is something that's not most important to the state policy.
That's all I have.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Gallardo?
Assembly Bill 3057 that just went into effect January 1st of this year. And that's for the JADs, junior accessory dwellings. Now, is that going to have a positive impact here on Greenfield? Is that going to make it easier for people to build their granny or in-laws units?
So the difference between JADUs compared to ADUs is when you take your existing house and you essentially cut off, or you take a part of it and make it a totally independent unit.
Right.
So just like renting out a room, except making it legal, having access to its own independent access from outside, they can have their own sleeping and kitchen facilities. And the most recent one says you don't have to provide its own bathroom, if they have access to it and the rest. You know that whether or not we will legalize it happen all the time, in these types of situations. And here you're not adding any extra square footage. It's just, it does legalize it, it makes it go forward, and says, okay, I'm gonna rent out a room now, and if they have their own access to the outdoor space, then the idea is that they don't have to come through the front door to get to their.
Right. Okay, now, I was told by some, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, I apologize. I was told by someone that garage conversion doesn't necessarily mean it's an ADU, is that correct?
Not necessarily. So if you did a straightforward garage conversion, you use it as living space, as your gym or whatever, that would not be necessarily considered an ADU. However, I'd have to defer to staff as far as the garage conversion, but I assume that we've done for living purposes to rent out, you know.
On that, that's typically not something at all, we will not excuse me, ADU does respect, ADU law does respect them from having to take that parking, so if they were to convert it to this more than space, it's with your, you will take that parking and those people can accomplish that. So typically the law does not prohibit parking that
No, I think most people are under the impression, including myself, that an ADU is separate from the original building, right?
In many cases, it is.
Right.
You can have an accessory dwelling unit that sits in the backyard. of
Right.
the home, so you can have an attached accessory dwelling unit that could be in addition to your house, using the wall system, your roof, extend it out and it's attached to your unit. And that's different from the JDU. JDU is where you add no square footage at all, you just basically rearrange the interior of your house.
Right, but an ADU is connected to a home, that's actually connected to a home, they have to have their own facilities in there, correct?
So they would have their own, so an ADU would have its own bathroom, its own kitchen, its
Right.
own bedroom.
Even though it's the size of a shoebox, it's gotta be in there.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zavala. Vice Chair. So, thank you for the presentation. So regarding the limited exceptions to deny, one of them listed as an impact on public safety. Can you give me an example of what that might be?
That's a good question because that's the words right out of the law. It doesn't say exactly what that means. Usually when we talk about public safety in buildings, we talk about meeting the building code. So you can't have a wall or a door that goes to nowhere. You can't have an area that you just can't physically get somewhere to. So we talk about having to have 4-foot setback. There may be an isolated situation where putting a building in a certain part of the property just makes it easier to protect it or to get to safe. Because the way it's ordered is okay. I don't believe it would be because, oh, this area of town is not them. I don't think it has to do with this area of town is no crime or anything like that. I think it has to do with the ability to get safely in and out of your unit and to ensure that it's safe for fire. But that's exactly what the language says in the text, but it doesn't give examples of that.
So it's pretty,
And I haven't seen anything in the court to say what that means. I'm not aware of it.
Okay, and on that same vein, do you have any examples of, you mentioned states going after jurisdictions that are pushing back or not in compliance? What are they doing when they go after a jurisdiction?
At this point, I mean, the Attorney General's office are actually really nasty letters, and you can read them online and you see these. And we're talking about some very high profile things with well-to-do residents that are just, turning their whole cities into historic districts. They're doing some other types of things. They're trying really hard to put it that way. You can read some of those examples online. They have a whole housing accountability meeting now, and one of the latest laws gives them some good discretion to go after cities that don't do anything like that.
No, I mean, the housing accountability, and I don't know if it's specific, specific to ADUs, but I mean, I've seen they may have the authority to fine a city, sometimes as much as $10,000 a day, with things like that, the housing element or something where you're not complying with housing law, they have the ability to just essentially force the city to approve projects that may not even comply with code. So there's different, I don't know that that's specific to ADUs, but these are kind of the methods that we've seen in other housing accountability areas. So I think that those could conceivably be applied to ADUs as well.
Thank you. So it seems like we have very little discretion, as you mentioned, and the thing that I'm sure bothers all of us to some extent is the parking problems that come along with that. But these plans that are, you know, for lack of a better word, going to be a streamlined process, they're still required to present your plans, and they have to use licensed contractors. We can't, correct? They have to
Yeah.
comply with that
You can
still.
be an owner builder, you choose to take that risk yourself of doing the property. But you do have to get a building permit, you have to follow the building code. We talked about that ADU amnesty. So, as you know, there have been the units that have been built without permits. You know that there have been structures that have been occupied without permits. And there's a process now before you go out and code enforcement takes action, and there's a process where they have to have an opportunity to remedy that, to permit it. Sometimes you can, it doesn't take much. Sometimes the structures are so old that you can't. But that is something that, any new building, especially if the idea of the pre-approved plan says is to make it really streamlined. When you come in, you say, I want to pick that one, and it's already approved, and then you go out and build it. There are companies out there, just like the solar panel companies, that can over ADU for you. There's different ways to finance that. It's definitely an industry. It's definitely something that is of interest to a lot of people. Let's face it, it's given the cost of housing, it's way easier to add something like that onto the existing property than to go out and secure new property. So there is a lot of appeal to it, and you can see that. I don't know what the ADU numbers are in our permits, but I know it's pretty high. I remember the new permits way more than we used to before all these laws happened. And not having to pay impact fees with the savings of $30,000, maybe $30,000 plus on a unit. So it is a very cost-effective way of increasing housing.
They're still subject to inspection.
They're subject to all the building code inspections, they're subject to the building codes that are in place, so and certainly we want to see many of these units that are out there to be permitted.
Okay, and one last thing, on this attachment to the handbook, regarding owner occupancy, this, whatever AV this is, there's a lot of them. Anyways, they're removing the existing 2025 sunset of the prohibition of an owner occupancy requirement, and instead mandates no owner occupancy requirements for ADUs. So, and then it follows that it authorizes a local agency to adopt a local ordinance to allow separate conveyance of the primary dwelling unit and ADU as condominium. By adopting this new ordinance, are we still going to have that ability to adopt a local ordinance regarding these conveyance?
So, I know we haven't taken any action or anything like that. The owner occupancy piece was, yeah, supposed to be a 5-year trial run back in 2020, but the idea was, a number of cities have required owner occupancy to, you're gonna build a investor in the community, and feel like you have landlords that will build a lot of these things, especially on the market side, especially on the but yes, I mean, there's not a lot of activity with that particular provision of the law. There's been down with the SB9, there's been, as far as this idea of selling your house separate from the ADU, and there's certain requirements that are placed there, and not taking any of that. I don't think there would be a lot of, I don't think there will be a lot of action on that, because there is just not really a part of getting the survey, getting it out into the legal aspect of it. I don't believe that it would foreclose on its ability to do something without it. To make it. I just haven't seen any activity going here to do that.
Now, are ADUs available for sale?
That was the idea of SB9 and to make ADUs separate from housing. So right now, the zoning code would not allow you to subdivide those lots. So there's a requirement that in order to have a building lot, you have to have frontage to the street. Right? You can't just split the front yard and the back yard, and that's what these state laws are starting to do. There are certain owner occupancy requirements that have been a part of that. Because they certainly don't want investors going in and just splitting up the town into little pieces. So, in 95% of cases, your standard case is just going to be a rental. Unless someone takes the time to go through one of these things and meet the criteria and set it up. But it is tricky to do.
I think that's all I have. So,
Can I ask one question? Sorry, may I?
let's,
For ADUs, if the lot permits, can they have more than one ADU?
The answer to that is yes. Like you said, it depends on what you have on the square footage on your lot. If you can have an ADU, you can have a big ADU, you can have your home as a unit. So just off the top, your typical unit can support the typical piece of single family zone residential property. You could, in theory, for example, I just put this as an example, you have this, 2,000 square foot house with a drive, you put the drive in an ADU, convert it, and then you put a house in the back, you have 2 units, and no requirement for any additional lot. The state's well aware of that, and you don't have to be an owner, you don't have to occupy the property, you can build that triplex essentially, and live,
So what about those Creek Bridge apartments that have, Creek Bridge properties that have the carriage unit in the back? Can they convert that garage?
really good.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
okay, so there's a motion on page 14 of our packet. Anybody so inclined?
I move that the planning commission adopt resolution 2025-01, recommending that the city council adopt an ordinance, chapter 17.90 of the Greenfield Municipal Code related to accessory dwelling units, considering state-required modifications and submitting the ordinance to the State Housing and Community Development Department for review.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Okay, we'll move on to our second public hearing, which is the consideration of a resolution approving a one-year extension for the 802 El Camino Real tentative map, APNs 109-141-004 is their staff report.
Okay, hello. So our next item is an extension of a tentative parcel map for a minor subdivision at 802 El Camino Real. So as you might remember, January of 2023, the Planning Commission approved a design review, conditional use permit, and minor subdivision for the Poppy Truck Stop. This included a convenience store, a car wash, a quick service restaurant just down the street. So part of that project included subdividing the parcel into two, hence the tentative map. Since their approval in 2023, the applicant has been working with the city, getting their building permits reviewed, and in fact, they're in the final stages of that, ready to start construction very soon. They've also submitted their final map application, but due to unforeseen circumstances, it's taken them a little longer than expected to have all that finalized. And in order to ensure that the tentative map doesn't expire before they can get that final map recorded, they're requesting a one-year extension, which would change the expiration date to January 3rd of 2026, which is reflected in the conditions of approval. Given the fact that the applicant has been working in getting these permits and they do have a final map application submitted, staff recommends that you approve this extension to allow them enough time to get the final map recorded. Thank you.
Thank you for that staff report. I'm going to open the public hearing. Are there any public comments?
No public comments?
Anybody in the room? Okay, we'll close public hearing. Move on to planning commission discussion and decision. I'll start at my right this time with Commissioner Zavala.
No, I think we should go forward with the extension.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Well, no, we keep extending some of these places and they never get built, so. It just puzzles me that everything's set, we've got the map here and everything's set, but why do we have to wait for a whole year before they can sign? We should have permits and stuff by now.
Agreed. And I will say that the applicant has been very active as of this year, and their building permits are near approval. So once they have those permits, the only thing pending is to get that map recorded, which they do have an application for. So I understand your frustration, but I will say it's promising and they are making significant progress.
It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to take a whole year.
For the final map
Right.
approval? No, that should be more standard and it'll just be done internally.
Well, you done it all? Yeah. Oh, I don't see no reason why we shouldn't move forward.
No, no comment.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. I appreciate the letter written by the engineer, giving me a little peace of mind that they are moving forward with this. So I believe there's a motion on page 79.
I move that the planning commission of the city of Greenfield adopt resolution number 2025-02, approving a one-year time extension to the 802 El Camino Real tentative parcel map, subject to the conditions of approval included as an exhibit to the resolution.
Thank you for that. Is there a second?
1 second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Thank you.
carries. Thank you. Moving on to H, other business, a 2024 year-end department update.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission, Paul Mugen, Community Development. We'll give you a brief update for the year end this year. The written documentation for our major projects review is incomplete at this time. Its last issuance was of June at the start of the fiscal year. We're working to update that. Every project in the previous document has moved forward to some degree. We'll begin on the north side of town in the industrial district. We see a lot of activity that is ongoing. You'll recall the Poppy's truck stop on the east side of El Camino Real across the street from the Shell station is moving forward with its restaurants and excuse me, and truck facilities at that location. Across the street on the 5-acre parcel south of Cypress, the developer Osho is moving forward with completing building plans for a self-storage facility that will include approximately 65 parking spaces for RE vehicles or larger scale vehicles such as boats, etc. That's moving forward in the building permit stage. Moving to the Walnut Avenue specific plan, the Avila Farmworker Housing Project has completed its final building at that site and now are concentrating on marketing and attracting some secondary commercial to complement what we expect to be further development during the year in the Walnut Avenue specific plan. Specifically, I've spoken with the Marriott Town Place. They're moving forward with the review of, and the preparation, I should say, of their building permits. That is something we've long anticipated and are quite excited about. It's an 80-room, 3-star Marriott Town Place hotel. Concurrent with that, La Quinta is seriously considering building on a site southerly of the Marriott site. That project has gone forward and stalled depending on the market feasibility of whether the city can accommodate 2 hotels, and they're believing that they can. Now, we haven't yet to receive a submittal on the La Quinta side. However, the Marriott is in their 3rd pass back, so the Marriott is live. Their building permit is $75,000 permit, and as I stated, they're on their 3rd pass back. So we hope to wrap that up and get those building permits issued so they can begin construction, hopefully no later than the 2nd quarter this year. The Yanks Air Museum is ripe for an update to both the Planning Commission and the City Council. 60-day notice to the property owner will go out this month, so we'll hear from Yanks, or perhaps not. There hasn't been a lot of activity at the site. The city is trying to entice the developer there to at least upgrade their signs on the site. The RV, you may be well aware that the RV site has the, they really look like homemade signs for the RV park. We can do better than that, and we're working with them to see if we can't get that accomplished, along with a more substantive update for the project. They're, as we've stated on a recurring basis, are approximately 15 years behind their own phasing plan. Southerly of town, the South End annexation is heavily marketed by Capital Rivers in Sacramento we're working with a housing developer currently that is extremely interested. They're crunching the numbers to see what kind of a housing development partnered with commercial that they may be able to put on the South End annexation site. This particular acreage is attractive because we are not bound by LAFCO or other draft maps that in many instances the city would be bound to adhere to. The time lapsed since annexation of that acreage has passed, and therefore we have more flexibility than we otherwise would have to process a solid development there. That essentially concludes the oral portion of my report. Again, the major projects report issued last June was well received, and we're working to update that. Interestingly enough, it's all moved in the right direction. So in 6 months, that document itself is obsolete. So we'll have that for the Planning Commission earlier than the next meeting, but we'll present it at the next Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that report. Are there any public comments? Planning Commission discussion, I'll just let whoever wants to go on this one.
I was in that Extra Mile place out there on Walnut, and the one that has where they got the pizza place and the chicken place and stuff like that. And they still haven't opened up that chicken place because they're still waiting on PG&E. Is there any word what's happening, why it's taking so long?
Thank you, Commissioner, for that. No, we have, the building official has been in contact with PG&E, and they give us no information. They have no idea and are unwilling to commit to any kind of a schedule. It's really bad. It's really bad.
They were concerned too why PG&E is taking so long.
Yeah, so we're all waiting on PG, and of course, they're working off of a generator, if you can believe that. It's very unseemly, and really, we should do something about that. But, I mean, PG&E is a well-trodden culprit, but it's extremely frustrating for the property owner that has invested obviously millions of dollars in building a site and getting to a point where they're able to conduct business on the site with a generator. So we're very chagrined about it. But the building official is very aggressive, opening up contacts inside PG&E, so at least we get information. Having bad news is better than just a wall of silence, but it's little consolation.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah. Do you have any updates on the Tom Rogers Museum?
No, Commissioner Gallardo, I don't have a strong update on the Tom Rogers Museum at this time. We'll make sure to follow up with the Planning Commission on that. The last I understood, they were, while they were completing the first phase, there were a number of problems in placing it on the foundation, but they have been resolved to the best of my knowledge. So we don't have a solid update on the Tom Rogers this time.
Once on these bigger projects, you mentioned the hotel, once permits are issued, how far after does construction start with those guys? Is it months, or is it right away? It's not right away, or it is right away, or?
It depends is the answer, but typically it's in the developer's interest to start sooner than later. Normally, they're not pining for capital. They have the capital normally by the time they've paid for the building permits. And so we anticipate, and I have verbal commitments from the developer that they'll be starting immediately on it, and that there will not be an extenuated waiting period. That is a fear and a concern of ours because, of course, the building permits have a shelf life, so it could be some time. But we're being told that they will be rolling right into construction upon issuance of the building permit, Commissioner Mendoza.
And you mentioned property on the south end of town. Is that residential as well as commercial?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool.
Of course.
Do you have an update for the Walnut, what is the name of that property here on Walnut Street, the second place, the second,
Terrace, the Walnut Terrace?
Walnut Grove. Walnut Grove Apartments.
They should be finishing up soon. I do not. They had some issues with, I believe, the sidewalk that Public Works was working on. We can follow up on that. I don't have a detailed summary on the Walnut Place apartments.
Are they gonna have purple lights?
Okay, well, once again, thank you for that report. I know it follows the extensive one you gave us in June, and it's just proves that you guys have been working really hard, and I'd like to thank you all for that. There's been a lot of movement in Greenfield, and we're just on a roll, so thank you for that. And I'll move on to the Planning Commissioner role in parliamentary procedures, staff report.
I'll have a few comments. Let's see. I don't have a lot to add to the staff report. Now, the report in your packet, I strongly urge you to read it. It's got great detail. This is probably the most experienced planning commission that I've seen here since 2008. But I always enjoy, and I did so before this meeting, rereading the protocols, just to refresh myself on those tenets. It's always a good idea to review them. One issue that is not well understood that I'd like to comment briefly on, and frankly, you see it in other jurisdictions far more often than you see it in Greenfield, but from time to time, we'll see a planning commissioner or a city council person say, you know, I want to see a workshop on affordable housing. And that individual is speaking as an individual. In other words, you act and make decisions as a body, as a whole. This is why, for example, each of you can speak on issues before the city council so long as you distinguish yourself as speaking for yourself as opposed to representing the planning commission. Now, you can represent the planning commission with the right authorization if the planning commission wants you to represent the commission's viewpoint on a particular issue. Perfectly fine. But if a city council person, for example, and this would apply to appointed officials as well, if a city council member says, you know, I want to have a workshop, staff set that up, that's not the way it works. The entire city council needs to say, and usually it's well understood that there is a consensus or there is not a consensus, but just because an individual wants something doesn't necessarily make it a task for staff. And as I said, you see this in other jurisdictions quite frequently. That's the only comment I have to say about the protocols we have.
So I get what you're saying, but if, there was a workshop of some sort desired, it would have to be an agendized item and voted on? Or is it just not in our purview to want to have a workshop?
Oh, no, you can have a workshop and direct staff. The idea, though, is it has to be a collective decision.
Can I go first on this one? Sure. I'm spreading it out. So I'm talking specifically about the bylaws, and it's okay if you don't know the answer to this, but do you know when these were, the last time they were updated? Does anybody know that?
I do not. I do not know when they were updated last.
And, just recently, it seems that the appointment process was called into question with my reappointment. And I'm wondering, I really don't see it addressed here, but I'm wondering if we should look at these, and would it be contained within our bylaws to address that? Or would that be part of the municipal code to address that? Because this most recent one wasn't the first time. I mean, I've seen it come before, and I agree, it should be more transparent and opportunity for those who want to apply it should.
I would just, that is agendized for the council meeting next
Okay.
week. So the city council will look at what they want the process to look like, and then we'll also decide whether or not they just want to amend the ordinance or also the bylaws.
Okay.
So that'll be talked about next Tuesday.
Okay.
And then also, just to address your question about agenda items, I did check your bylaws because sometimes commission bylaws do address how commissioners add items to the agenda, and there's nothing in there about that either. So if you ever did want to address your bylaws, that might be something to add as well.
I personally would like to address the bylaws one of these days, not
That's
today
a good
or
idea.
tomorrow, but because I would notice that the commission is made up obviously of 5 members, but that one member can be a resident of an unincorporated area lying within 1 mile of the city limits of the city. And I was wondering if that's something we could expand to reach out to the Release Canyon folks, because I know that they get a little upset that they can't vote and they feel like they have no voice here when they are residents of Greenfield, and I just was wondering if that could be.
It's a good idea. We can get that on the agenda.
Yeah, and I would just clarify that you can discuss amending your bylaws and propose amendments, but they would have to be approved by council.
Okay. So I have, anybody else have comments?
Release Canyon, that's 3.5 miles. And then let's say that you're going along with Release Canyon, how far in are you gonna go? Is it just anybody on Release Canyon? Because Release Canyon is 5 miles long. So I mean, that could,
Well, you could say 5 miles, 10 miles.
Or residents, right, of the zip code or whatever, right?
Something to think about.
Yeah, I was also reading the bylaws, and I read on section 1, the mayor is the one who appoints a commissioner, but it was a vote this time around with Chair Garcia. So how did that happen? Or I just want clarification on how it became a vote.
No, Commissioner, I noticed that too. It's an excellent point. With the advice and consent of the
Right.
council, I noticed that as well, and I really can't answer that.
So advice means a vote, like how? Okay, so I was reading it.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that should be cleaned up. That's a little weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you for the planning commissioner's roll copy and another copy of the Rosenberg's Rules of Order. I keep wanting to call it Robert's Rules. I remember parliamentary stuff, so. Always good resources to refer to.
It is, yeah, I really appreciate this.
Is that it from you guys? Oh, I buried my agenda. Lost my agenda. Oh, here we go. Okay, thank you for that. Now, we are moving on to comments from Planning Commission and staff. Starting with staff, do you guys want to say anything?
That microphone works.
Does it work now?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to inform the Planning Commission of a few resources that we have for you that I'm going to be emailing one of tomorrow. So our firm published a housing law handbook, and that handbook has a chapter on ADUs, so that might be a helpful follow-up to what you talked about tonight, but it just essentially is a high-level overview of housing law, and it's meant for commissioners or city council members or people who may not work in that field every day. And so I'm going to send you a link to that handbook. And then we're also going to be doing a webinar that's going to talk about those same issues, or at least some of them, and that's going to be February 13th at 9 a.m., and that'll link to register for that will also be in the handbook. And both the handbook and the webinar are free for clients, but you will have to register, and then they'll send you a link, but there is no cost. And then we're also going to be doing for those of you attending the Planning Commissioners Academy, the Cal Cities Planning Commissioners Academy, we'll be doing a presentation there on the same topic, but it will be different than the webinar. So hopefully if you want to attend both, you'll have the opportunity to hear different information. So that's it.
That's exciting. Any comments from Planning Commission that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to wish everybody a happy new year, and meeting adjourned 7:04.
I like what you said about people being on the planning commission. I think if they're within the zip code, they should be on there.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.